everybody. This is Ken Boone, Whiskey Wednesday Weekly. Thanks for joining me. Tonight I'm actually happy to have a special guest. He's a local kind of legend in San Diego, Matt Martelli. I'll get into his story a little bit more and let you kind of tell you who he is and what he's about. But first of all, thanks for letting me have this interview with you.
That's an excuse to hang out with a friend and drink some whiskey.
There you go. I've actually been to Matt's house, I think it was the Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor fight a couple of years back.
Yep.
And I didn't realize once I was, when we were having lunch the other day, that's the place I had been until I saw you. I was like, oh man, I love your house. He lives out here in Oceanside, California, up on some crazy stilts overlooking this amazing canyon. So glad he was able to let me use his house today. Tonight we're going to be just doing 4 whiskeys and a moonshine that I guess has a little bit of a story. Tell me a little bit about that moonshine.
Well, yeah, this is a good one. A friend of ours brought this to me in a Carlo Rossi bottle.
Was that full, by the way?
That was full.
Oh my God! It's only like a quarter of an inch on the bottom of that thing.
So we've been sampling it. Needless to say, but no, he has some legit moonshiners that he's friends with in Georgia, and they brought him over a load to Texas.
Nice.
And then he consequently brought me this bottle over to Lake Havasu at the UTV World Championship earlier this year. And,
earlier this year.
Yeah. So we've been sampling it. It's funny because I never was like, hey, let's go get some moonshine. Right. But in the last couple of years, I've gotten introduced to a few different types of moonshine that are actually pretty good.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, like I said, I know moonshine, I know it's strong, but I always thought there was no flavor. But you're saying this actually tastes pretty good.
Oh, there's definite flavor.
Oh, okay.
This one's, I think he explained this one was from a corn mash.
Oh, okay.
So you'll get those notes in there.
Nice. Well, let's crack it open first.
High alcohol content.
Just to kind of warm us up. And look at this. Sure. Like I said, there's very little left in this, so they've definitely taken some time and shared it. We've got a little water here on the side. We'll do a little bit of sorry, it's a big bottle, so I'm struggling to pour it, but let's see, we'll do a little 1 ounce there. How strong is this, did he tell you?
Yeah, you can run your car on it. It's strong.
Oh, are you serious?
But,
it's corn, that's why, right?
Yeah.
You got that corn base.
Well, and it's, one of my favorite things about moonshine is that that's why racing in America started.
Oh, okay.
Right? So the first modifications to any vehicle where it was I think the story is that it was a German clockmaker who had migrated to the U.S.
Okay.
And he figured out how to modify engines, the early T-model Fords.
Okay.
And so moonshiners would pay this guy to modify their engines so they could outrun the police.
Oh, okay.
Right? And
so kind of like nitrous a little bit, but back then.
Well, just really it wasn't, they weren't changing the fuel. Mm-hmm. They were just modifying the engine so it had more horsepower, right?
Okay.
And it took a while for the police to catch on to what they were doing and figure out how to do it. So,
when they did, they figured, let's do that too.
Yeah,
let's try it out. Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
I'm not sure what I'm going to experience with this one.
Right?
That's freaking weird.
Yeah.
I thought it would be like, it's got some bite and some hardness. It's smooth as hell.
It's smooth, yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a good opener for sure. Yeah. It's just homemade, right? There's no brand.
This is full on, illegal moonshine, right? It was smuggled in somebody's trunk and somebody else's trunk. And
well, as long as you've
made
its way to tell about it.
Yeah. So.
And it's way mean. Well, that's good. Well, we'll jump right in a little bit because like I said, we do have a time clock. I don't want to keep him here all day, but I'm sure he has a lot to say because knowing his story a little bit, very little, he's done and seen a ton of things. So this is about him, and I just want to kind of experience a little bit about, I know your upbringing. We have a little bit of similarity. We haven't really talked much about it, but we were both raised a little hard-nosed, kind of that father. So tell me a little bit about where you're from, what your story was growing up, do you have siblings and all that good stuff?
Sure, yeah. No, it's a good one. I was born in a town in Michigan called Kalamazoo. Okay. And everybody thinks it's funny because of the name, unless they've been there. Yeah. And they realize it's like the second largest city in Michigan. And,
wow.
GM, lots of people worked for General Motors, Upjohn Pharmaceuticals. And so when GM pulled out, it was one of the cities in, just like Detroit, that turned into, a bus town, right?
Okay.
And so
what's a bus town?
Like it was not. I wouldn't call it a ghetto. There were parts. The part that we lived in was pretty ghetto, but it was essentially a failed city because the large majority of the people worked for General Motors. When General Motors pulled out,
oh, I gotcha.
You didn't. Nobody had a job. Nobody had a future. They didn't know what to do.
Was it, so you said Michigan?
Uh-huh.
So is that like, I know because there was like, M&M or 8 Mile or whatever was in like Detroit area.
Yep.
Was that kind of close to that whole?
That's on the other side of Michigan, but same fun.
Yeah, same kind of, it's kind of a rundown little town once they left.
Same issue with Detroit. It was a huge industrial town, and as the industry pulled out of Detroit, it really set people up for failure because they were told all their lives, like, you're going to have this job, you're going to work
retire, get the watch, 40, 50 years.
So many of those people never graduated high school, and they went straight to work at the factories. And then when the factories pulled out, they really had no plan or no hope. And you see that fallout today, and even in cities like Chicago, where they're still suffering from that fallout.
Wow, that's weird. And he's such a young looking guy. I mean, it's like for you to have experienced that even as a child.
Well, it's I love it because it gives me a contrast for how good we have it in Southern California, in particular in North County, San Diego. I mean, this is La La Land.
It is insane. I was just telling my.
It's beautiful.
It's so funny. I was just on the way here talking about how we are so much different. How people are going through this pandemic and everything, and you just think we feel like, oh, we're suffering, but in reality, there's people that are, like you said, living in different parts and have an apartment, and they're like, they're screwed.
Yeah, I mean, you don't you don't know what suffering is until you see, the entire city, all the adults walking around like zombies,
right?
And
just gray and dark.
Yeah, and just it was gnarly and depressing, but it's one of those things today that still motivates me.
Exactly.
It's like I remember the taste of welfare cheese, and I'll never taste that again.
Welfare cheese, I like that.
So
well, what's funny is that, like I said, I want to cut that short because I want to get into more about when he did. I mean, because 12 years old, I remember, from like 5 to 12. So there was a lot of times in there. So tell me a little bit about your upbringing and other than the hardness of the city, where did you, what did your dad do, and what made you so appreciative of everything?
Well, I mean, we were, my brother and I are very close. I have a sister as well. She was about 7 years behind us. But, because of the city we grew up in, and the way my dad raised us, it's like, if my brother came home with a black eye, I better have one too.
Okay.
And he didn't have a tight-knit family, so I think because of that, he held a higher value for family, and he instilled that in us. And
so it wasn't out of, and I don't want to cut you off there because I think that's an important point to bring up, because my upbringing was a little different. Mine was just, hey man, I was a stepchild, with the hard guy. He would just be like, you're a puss, get out there, I'll whoop your ass, that kind of thing. But it sounds like you're more like he was that way because he didn't have it that way, and he wanted to make sure his family was different. Protect each other, love each other, be a family. Okay.
No, that's I mean, that's really why he was so hard on us. He didn't want to have us have to experience the things that he did, and so we grew up pretty disciplined in a lot of regards.
Right.
Physical activity. I started martial arts when I was 6. My brother was 4.
Oh, I forgot about that. You're right. You're like a major, you went through a ton of black belt training, right?
Yeah, I trained multiple styles. Still train jiu-jitsu and judo to this day.
Yeah.
Even in that, I was lucky enough to start in a really hard Japanese style in Kalamazoo under a guy who was half black and half Japanese named James Thompson. And
he was in Michigan?
Yeah, he was a hard ass.
Wow.
He was like, that couldn't exist now because they would just get in trouble for their level of discipline.
Right.
But in the environment and in the time, it was totally necessary.
It was worth it, necessary, yeah, it was needed, yeah.
And I'm super glad that we had that experience. And then, moving to Southern California, it was like, it was like going on vacation, man.
Now, let me ask you, what brought you here? Was it your dad or your mother, or just as a group you guys came out here?
Yeah, my dad decided to take a position here, and
fortunate.
Yeah, it's a funny story. I remember him sitting us down, and he's like, "Well, I have a job offer in Saudi Arabia or in San Diego." And even at 12, I was like, "Is this a conversation? We're going to San Diego, right?"
I know, right? You're like at 12, you're like, I don't even know why you're being asked.
Like earlier this year, I went to Saudi Arabia for the first time for the Dakar race.
Okay.
And it's a beautiful country with a beautiful culture. I was really impressed with it.
Yeah. But 40 years ago, it would have been different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even now, it's not San Diego.
It's not San Diego.
So,
exactly.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Now, does your brother still live out here with you?
Yep.
And your sister?
Yeah, my brother and I are partners.
Okay.
My sister lives in Tennessee. But my brother and I are partners in our business, and we work together every day and
that's awesome.
argue every day.
Yeah, of course.
And problem solve every day. So it's cool.
That's very cool.
I dig it.
Well, I know there's probably way more to the story, and we'll probably dig back into a little bit of that martial arts, but right now we're actually going to hit a shot. Tonight I brought only 4 bottles, like I mentioned. We just had the Moonshine, which I think I'm getting a little cloudy already. But I'm actually going to do the Old Forester. Now, I brought Old Forester out a couple episodes ago, but this is the single barrel, which I did not bring out. So all these are a little more stronger. So your wife, hopefully, I'm glad you ate before you did this, because I didn't. I had like a protein bar, so I'm screwed. So just let me know when. I don't mind sharing whatever you want.
Sure. Okay.
You good?
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead and try it. Have you had Old Forester before?
I have not had this one. No.
Okay, the single barrel?
No.
Okay, all right, here, try it.
Cheers.
Yeah, I think you'll like it. It's super smooth. It's one of my favorites. Is that good?
That's good.
Yeah, you can sip on that. You don't have to chug it all.
No, it's good.
We got about another 10 minutes for another shot. It is very good, right? I think it's the first time I've had the single barrel, and as they get stronger, sometimes they taste a little different. But
for sure.
That one's super smooth.
Yeah, I mean it's got some heat in the front of it from the alcohol content, but it smooths out
at
really
the
nice.
end. Yeah.
I'm a whiskey rookie, but it's a fun thing to learn.
It is, yeah. He's more of a tequila guy. You know, being from Southern California since he was 12, that's pretty much what you do, right? You learn about tequila.
Tequila and mezcal.
Yeah, that's true. So I do want to get into a little bit about your business with your brother, but I do want to focus a little bit about what you had mentioned. So tell me a little bit about the time from when you were 12 to maybe whenever you started your company. You ran with some pretty big people, and you don't have to name drop. I'm just saying, like, what were those years like with surfing and skateboarding and you know, kind of being a San Diego local with the legends that are around here?
Well, it's crazy because Southern California is like a Bermuda Triangle of energy, you know, and it goes back probably even before hot rodding, but this was, you know, where hot rodding was born, and that changed the world of automotive. Certain fashion trends,
know that, by the way.
Certain fashion trends, certain food trends. You know, we're all born here, and you know, for sure, part of the reason is that, you know, we don't have winter, right? So like right now we're in t-shirts and flip-flops, right?
It's freaking November 15th
and we're mad because it's this cold, right? Like I honestly last week had to put pants on, and I'm like, damn, I gotta wear pants.
I know, the people watching this back on the East Coast or wherever else, they're probably like, screw you bastards. I know, but it's very true. It's very true. I brought a sweater.
Yeah.
Because we might be outside at 70 degrees in the shade. I mean, that's how
could die. Right? But you know, growing up in, you know, here, kids, it's not by design per se, but you start skateboarding, you start surfing, and you know, one thing leads to another. And for me, you know, it was the 80s, and it was on this growth of skateboarding that was happening, and I wanted to be a professional skateboarder.
So you and me both, buddy. I
know.
admired Tony Hawk. I was on the East Coast, and all I wanted to do was be like Powell Peralta and be like the Bones Brigade and all that stuff.
All those movies had a huge influence. The difference for us, though, was
you were here.
We knew them.
You were in it.
Yeah, we were like, oh, we're skating at Del Mar, right? we were. It's funny stories about Tony because a lot of people don't know when he was coming up as a pro, he delivered pizzas.
Yeah.
So that was like our joke is we would prank order pizzas from him, right? And he would figure it out, you know. But
just like, hey, you're here, right?
Yeah. And but no, it's there's some magic to the West Coast.
It is, isn't it?
It continues to generate things, different cultural paradigms, and so we are part of that action sports culture growth, and really inside of it, seeing ESPN show up and launch X Games and being on the inside of that and meeting people that were launching skateboard brands and and at the same time I through an ROP program in my high school started learning graphic design and printing and screen printing and visual arts, and I just fell in love with that. I found my purpose. I think before that I looked at schools like this incredible burden, and I didn't want to be there, and I didn't like I couldn't grasp the teaching, and later on I figured part of that was because I'm dyslexic, right? But as a kid, you're being told this is what you have to do, and you have to go to college, and I couldn't see myself
subscribe to it. Yeah,
No.
And I was the same way. I was in the military. You went a whole different route, graphic school kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I almost went military too. It just luckily I had already got exposed to photography, filmmaking, graphic design, and it was part in school and part in skateboard culture. Yeah. Because the rad thing about skateboard culture is nobody asks you if you're a photographer. They just go, "Hey, hold my camera," and you have a choice. You either hold the camera or you start taking photos. So I started taking photos.
Really? Okay. Yeah. So you were a skateboarder, but someone would say, "Hey," and you're like, "Cool," and you took photos.
Yeah, and that became this thing of like we would go skate and we'd shoot photos of ourselves and each other, and awesome. and then later on it was video, and so learning that at a young age, I was just really influenced by that culture. Then I went to school and ended up working at different ad agencies. Okay. And that was also a really cool learning experience, but what I figured out very quickly is that they were very rigid in their ideas. Okay. And everything was very planned, and it was like, hey, here's our 2-year campaign. And what was happening is that trends were speeding up and changing quicker. And so I could see that these skateboard brands were the opposite, where they were real messy and they weren't planned. They would kind of wake up in the morning and go, "Hey, we have an ad due. Right. Does anybody have a photo?" But even with all that messiness, they were able to stay on the pulse of what was going on.
Correct, and it was almost organic, right? Like,
it was.
Yeah, I mean, like that whole free spirit kind of throw a picture out. It was the picture of, it wasn't staged. Right. It was just some dude like throwing.
That was one thing that I learned that was super important with action sports culture and is authenticity. Yeah. Right? Like you can't fake it. And because the kids, if you can survive in skateboarding, that's like the most brutal market, in terms of make a product, sell it, distribute it, and you pretty much have a 3-month window before the product is old, right? And you've got to come out with something new. So it's like boot camp for marketing and
Interesting, because I didn't even know that much about you, like as far as, talking to one of our mutual friends. I didn't realize you were that ingrained in that whole culture back then. And then you also did some off-road stuff, right? Of course, being Southern California, that's another huge thing.
That's part of the culture here, and like literally the weekend we arrived here, my cousin looks at me and he goes, "Hey, do you want to go to Mickey Thompson?" And I'm like, "Well, what's that?"
You're like, "I'm from Michigan, bro."
And then we're down on Jack Murphy Stadium on the floor, and we're watching, the legends of that era: McCachran, Walker Evans, Robbie Gordon when he was young. His dad.
I was gonna say, okay, because I knew Gordon, but he was young. Okay.
And he was a teenager then. Yeah. And then his dad was a racer, and it was like, well, this is incredible. Right. As a young kid, I was just like, where was this? And then it just snowballed because it part of the culture here is like, hey, you going to Glamis? Like, well, where's Glamis? Right. And then it's like, I remember telling my parents that I was going with the neighbor to Ensenada, to Baja, and I'm pretty sure they didn't know it was another country.
In Mexico, right?
You know what I mean? I'm pretty sure they're like, oh, okay, Matt.
Sure, yeah,
see you
miles down the
tomorrow.
road, yeah.
Right? And, you know, being exposed to the Baja 1000 and racing in Baja, you know, at 12 years old.
Right, right.
Of course, you fall in love. How can you not?
It's
It's incredible. So, you know, as we got a little bit older, we were always, you know, in and around off-road culture for recreation and for competition.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then, you know, I decided to leave this agency that I was working at when I was 20.
So you were an employee of an agency. Okay, this ad agency you were talking about. Okay.
One of them that I worked at, and I loved what I was doing, but I couldn't relate to the subject matter. It was mostly women's hair care products. Okay. So I would moonlight for all these skateboard brands, and then work a full-time job. And finally, I just got, you know, up enough, you know,
chutzpah,
yeah, to you know, quit the agency and start freelancing and start Mad Media. And so I did that 25 years ago, I think 27 years ago, out of my bedroom. Okay. And initially the goal was to make rent,
right.
You know?
Right.
That's it. You know, whatever I could do to make rent.
Wow.
Like, great. And then...
Yeah, because you're 20-some years old. I mean, you don't have, like, this long-term vision at the time. You're just like, dude, I just quit my job. I need to have...
But I knew, too, that there was something... That there needed to be a mixture between traditional advertising and marketing and what action sports marketing was, right? So if I could take kind of the best of both of those things and mix them together,
right.
And what I started calling as more is tactical guerrilla marketing, because that was pre-internet, so you couldn't, you know, it wasn't social media. There was no social media. Social media was a skateboard video.
Sure.
A VHS video that you handed to someone.
Out, yeah.
And they handed it to their next 10 friends, right?
Word of mouth.
Yeah, and magazines, you know, Transworld Media. I did a stint there, and then worked with them for years.
Oh, you did some stuff in Transworld?
Yeah.
Nice.
And, you know, a lot of really creative people there that I respected, from the writers to the photographers. They shaped a culture. It was incredible. And so, you know, we're just above the valley in Oceanside, where Transworld Media, you know, operated in its best years. And so being close to those creatives, that had a big influence on me as well.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then, you know, we hit a point with action sports where I'd grown the agency. I'd hired my brother, and then he'd become a partner. And we'd hired on more people, and the ceiling was too low for us. Okay. And so we had bigger aspirations. So we started doing work in automotive, and a friend of mine had just sold his shoe company, DC Shoes.
Okay. I want to actually pause you there.
Yeah.
Because this is about a transition point, and I like to stop, people know who watch the show, I like to stop on transition points, because I really want to make sure we break where the boom is going to happen, you know what I'm saying? At the same time, you need to finish that, because we're going to have another shot of whiskey. My stops are always a new shot of whiskey, so you better knock that back, because we're about to have some Angel's Envy. I won't pour so much for
it's fine.
him this time around.
I don't have to drive.
Yeah, that's true. And my wife dropped me off. So, this is Angel's Envy, which is one of my favorites. I know I said Old Fashioned is one of my favorites, but this is actually top 3. Have you ever had Angel's Envy?
Yes, I have.
Good. So you probably like this then. The one thing I wanted to bring up while we're actually on a pause, and I only do that because I like to hit that mark where things are about to change, right? The one thing I want to talk about is, it's interesting that you talk about media, and I was in newspaper print for about 3.5 years. That whole, I would go to the big agencies, and like you said, it was a whole different ball game, you know? And it's just interesting to hear your take on it, and how you know, I feel like there's so much difference. I think the kids today are certainly on a whole different level as far as what they can do because of social media, and they don't realize that people like yourself and Alex and the gentleman I did last week, I'm Bob, but you know, like what they did and what you did and what those people were doing before all that was the time. Like, it's almost like when they say, oh, someone paved the way, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's I'm not saying you guys are like pavers, because I don't want to put that.
No,
pressure on you.
I would agree.
You feel that.
The
Okay,
group
good.
of people that I was within definitely paved the way.
For people that don't realize that happened. Right?
Yeah, and like it had more profound effects in culture than even people give credit for now.
Sure, right.
Like if you realize that, let's use Tony Hawk for example.
Right.
The effect that Tony Hawk has had on the globe, i.e. skateboarding, is pretty profound.
Right, because skateboarding is like, how did that change? Like this guy changed everyone's perspective. Now there was other people behind it.
No, there was a lot of people, but what was great and where I give Tony a lot of credit is that he wasn't at the time the stereotype.
Right.
But what he became was the safe, relatable archetype hero that everybody could go, I want my kid to be like that.
Right.
Because the rest of us were not like that, right? And we didn't understand, it's funny, you grow as a businessman and as a person, and then you realize, oh, that was really dumb, And we didn't understand, we were within a culture and it was myopic. We couldn't see anything else. And there was people within skateboarding that had huge influences on me, Stacy Peralta, Steve Rocco, he was a huge one, and they showed me how to think bigger, right? And not just be focused on this little bubble. But the takeaway is that you get this set of skills of being a creative and a marketer from action sports that is super valuable. And even today, I run into it all the time where I'll go sit down with a company and have a meeting with them, and I have to hold myself back because I already know the answer. I already know what they should be doing. Right? And I know how to do it in a way for their brand that's authentic and not just some fake social media campaign, right? And so yeah, I think, it wasn't clearly just me. Sure. But I was within a group of people that ended up influencing the whole world.
Yeah, and that's the key. I mean, you're not here beating your chest. You're here describing what you grew up with and how it just changed who you were, because you were fortunate enough to land in San Diego at a perfect time, but then also see the potential and just run with some guys that if you guys all Googled all these names he's bringing up, if you didn't know them already, like they were the people that I wanted to be. And I am the kid that he influenced because I wanted to go to California. I left my town. I granted joined the military, but I did it because I wanted to go to California. Sure. Because of Tony Hawk, no shit. Yeah. Like I was doing the launch ramps. And all I wanted to do was go to California to be the kid that you were already, in the streets. And so, go ahead.
No, and that's the funny thing is, and I'm going to jump forward. Sure. And then we can circle back on the transition you're talking about. But what it's given me is this understanding of the power that we have to affect cultural change in an authentic way. So it's not a media buy and it's not, a campaign. It's looking at things and going, okay, we have this base culture here. How do we grow it? And how do we make that base culture become influencers for the whole world? Now there's a lot of fake bullshit influencers right now.
They call them influencers, and they're just a person.
Some of that is valid, some of it's not valid, and it's a little bit hard to discern now. But we're talking about
true influence.
Creating a culture, right? And a culture that expands from Southern California globally. The same things happen with hot rodding. It's happened with action sports, MMA, off-roading. Right. We're all born, essentially in Southern California, and a lot of them in San Diego.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, let's try this Angel's Envy, and then we'll get into your amazing Mad Media story. Yeah, there's just nothing wrong. There's not even that's just unreal, right? It's not even not and I do. So that being said, so DC shoes, I mean, most people probably 30 and under or older, whatever, but most of the time DC shoes. Yeah. And then you had mentioned Ken Block.
Yeah.
So I know that, he was famous for his racing style and stuff. So talk about how you and your brother and where it all went with Mad Media.
Well, we were off-road enthusiasts, and I'd raced and on bikes and in different vehicles.
So you raced. You weren't just casual. You were a pretty hardcore racer.
Well, racing costs money, so anytime I could,
right.
I could scrap together some money or get an opportunity.
Okay.
I still do that to this day.
Oh wow.
Because I love it, right?
Yeah.
And one of the important things is I love racing the crappiest cars, right?
Okay.
So I'll race all the nice stuff.
Uh-huh.
The trophy trucks, class 1 cars, 10 cars, UTVs, like those are nice vehicles. But I was just talking to, a friend of mine about renting his class 12 car, which is a VW powered little tiny.
Is it the kind with like the VW where the engine thing's sitting out the back, but it's
basically right? Like you're on the shifter box, right? Like a guy my size, you can barely shift and turn the wheel in it. But they're fun as hell. So to me, it doesn't matter what the vehicle is; they're all fun.
Yeah, you're just kicking ass.
But so Ken had just sold DC shoes, and we had a connection. Growing up in North County, we knew each other.
Okay. Because he's like from Vista or something originally, right?
Yeah, and but we'd also have several conversations about rally and about how both of us really loved rally. So he decided that he wanted to go rally racing, and at the time one of his athletes, Travis Pastrana, also wanted to go rally racing. Who we had known from freestyle motocross.
Right. Yeah, big legend.
And so we went rally racing. And after doing a few years of that, we were kind of frustrated because it was really, really cool, but nobody seemed to care. And so...
You're like, this is weird.
Well, now I understand it because it's difficult to consume. If I say, hey, you want to go to Ojibwe Forest with me and stand in the woods and watch rally cars go by, pretty much the answer is no.
No, right.
So it's too difficult to consume. So we started first making films about the racing, and then this idea Gymkhana came up, and the idea essentially was to take a condensed rally and make a video about it, like essentially a skateboard video with a car.
Okay.
And
which I've seen them. Yeah.
Right.
Yours exactly.
So we, my brother and I directed and produced Gymkhana 1 through 3, and if you remember Gymkhana 1, where Ken does the donuts around the Segway,
right? That
was my brother.
Oh, really?
Because everybody else was too afraid to get on the Segway.
I just watched it like the other day, just to make sure. Yeah.
And so he was the one with the biggest enough balls to go do that.
Right.
And it's a funny side note, but I remember finally showing my mom that film.
Oh my god.
She was pretty pissed off at me.
Yeah, it's like
that I let my little brother do that.
Right.
And it was one of those things where honestly we knew it was good.
Right.
But that was like YouTube had just begun.
Sure.
Like nobody knew that it was going to turn into what it turned into. But the takeaway for me wasn't that we're necessarily geniuses. The takeaway for me is that there are consumers out there who want something that's authentic and that's completely visceral. And if you can give that to them, they'll respond. Right? They're waiting in a sea of mediocrity and like crappy content. And so when something comes along that's remarkable, they champion it, right? And it's funny because that lesson is still lost today. Yeah. We were talking about in the context of Joker, the movie. The other day, of like, to me, that it was obviously going to be a giant film. Yeah. Right? Because it was so intense and so good.
So real. Yeah.
It reminded me of Taxi Driver back in the day, right? And you just watched it, and
De Niro, right?
Yeah, and you just watched that film, and you're like, this doesn't have a happy ending. It doesn't have all the things.
Follow the typical protocol.
Yeah, we're the big explosions and the hot chicks and all the things that make a Hollywood hit. Right. It's was a dark statement about society, but to the point that it was so good that people couldn't ignore it. Yeah. And that's my takeaway with Gymkhana is that, we gave people something that they had been wanting for a long time. Yeah. you know.
It's damn good.
And
what's funny is watching one and then the difference at 3, even though you're always been professional, man, it's just a day and night too. I mean,
well, yeah, we started having budgets. Yeah,
exactly.
The first one, I mean, it was half financed by us and half financed by Canada.
But still, how many cameras you had was unreal. Still.
Yeah. And but the funny story is I went in and pitched that to Subaru and all these companies.
Wow, really?
And, yeah, Monster, and they're like, what? It's what? It's not a commercial.
Right.
It's not a movie.
Right.
No, we'll pass.
Yeah.
You know, but after, you know, its success, they all came back and they're like, we're in.
Yeah. Because what kind of car was that, by the way?
That was the first 2 were a Subaru. Were built by a really smart car builder that specializes in the Subaru engine named Court Crawford.
Okay.
Here in Oceanside.
Oh wow.
So an amazing vehicle builders, especially when it comes to the power plants of vehicles.
Huh.
We were able to get a ton of horsepower out of
So like that whole Fast and Furious thing, right? Where they can take a little car and just make that thing crazy.
That was part of the other thing though too, is that Subaru didn't realize that they had this amazing car. Mm-hmm. Like they're like, yeah, it's the STI. I'm like, no, it's not the STI. This is Colin McRae's car. It's a 4-wheel drive, 600 plus horsepower car. That's what we can make it, and it only weighs 2,000 something pounds.
Right.
So that's a supercar basically, right? It outperforms many supercars.
Yeah.
Right. And you know they're reasonably priced. So if you're a kid going from your crappy car,
first car,
right, and you want something with more performance, but you're not BMW, Audi level,
right? That
car spoke to those kids, and what Gymkhana did was it just raised the flag and went, hey everybody, this is the car.
That's the car, yeah.
And Subaru, it's funny, Subaru had no idea what was about to happen.
Oh my god.
So it was really fun for me trying to tell these guys, about their car and about their brand and about their product.
They didn't even know they had it.
No, and then the next year they're like, okay, we're listening, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's one of those.
That's good because then the checks were bigger.
Yes, the checks became bigger, fortunately, but so did the stunts and the costs and everything. Yeah. So, it was a lot of fun.
That was a good launch then. That was kind of what really took you from, not like I said, you were already on the right path, but that really just prompted you to really have a good quality product.
Yeah, it made the Mad Media brand a global brand, especially in automotive.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. I still meet famous drivers to this day, and they're like, "Oh, I know who you are."
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, "Right on."
Cool. Yeah. It's like that's what I'm saying. You're like back in the day when you started it. That's awesome.
So it's cool, and it's what I enjoy is the effect that it's had on other creatives in trying to emulate it. Some have emulated it well. Sure. Some have done it poorly, right?
Right.
But that's cool. It reminds me of skateboard films. When we would make a skateboard film, it was like a war to see if the next skateboard company could come up with something better.
Okay.
And it proliferated that way. Hasn't quite done that in automotive, which is a little bizarre to me, but it's still cool.
Yeah, no, it is cool. And like you said, it's like, I don't know. I know these interviews a lot of times, like I've had a couple guests go like, hey, I don't want to beat my chest. I'm like, it's not about that. It's your story. It's like really what, and there's so many things that you're telling me right now that I feel like as just a guy who, loves all the stuff you're talking about and took a different path, it's like you wish, kind of like you were at that point at the time. But in the 80s, unfortunately, I was, on the East Coast, and then I got out here in 91, but I was in the military, so 95 roughly when I got out. And it's like, at that point, things were kind of already moving. You guys were, so looking back, it's like you are just, you're kind of a trendsetter. I mean, let's be honest. There's certain things that you've done and seen and been a part of that I'm not the guy that goes, man, that guy. I'm more like, dude, that was amazing. You killed it. You did exactly what you were supposed to do in the right time.
No, I appreciate that. And, I'm kind of the front guy of the company, so I end up getting a lot of credit for everything.
Right.
But it was, there was a group, and it's my brother, it's actually my cousin that works with us now, and and a lot of really talented filmmakers and cinematographers that work with us, who I made them crazy because
perfection.
Well, it's understanding, what makes things value, right?
Right.
And it's what I liken it to is I have a lot of friends who are really good chefs, and they are so detail oriented, about their food, the presentation, the sourcing of the material.
Prepare it too. I'm sure, like let it sit here versus just taking it out of the fridge. I mean, all those little things that we don't think about.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's a performance, right?
Right.
And you want that performance to have an effect on somebody, and that's the same way I am. I'm 46. I'm about to be 47 in December. So like, I don't need to necessarily get accolades, but what I want to do is to continue to produce, content that makes people feel something. You know what I mean?
Right. You haven't lost the value in quality. You want to make sure that it's like you're just not, hey man, let's just put something out, let's make this happen. You want to be like, no, I want it, if my name's behind it, I want it to represent something and make people go, damn, now that was good.
Well, I'd rather be the guy who made Joker than all the Batman films, right?
Yeah.
Clearly the Batman film directors made a lot more money.
Correct.
Right? But
the product wasn't the same.
No, and it's also the value of what you're doing. I mean, I love off-road. I love, automotive and racing, and the contrast between the serenity or the beauty and the violence of it. And I've been really fortunate to have witnessed a lot of these moments, right? And then captured them on film, because our goal is to share them with people so that they can get turned on, and they can go, you know what, I'm getting in a plane, I'm going to Baja, I want to experience that, or I want to go to the Mint 400, I want to experience that.
Okay, so when I get what you're saying. So when you're filming these races that we'll get into after the next shot, you're saying you want people to experience, to say like, I want to be a participant in that because that looks just so badass.
It was something that happened early on in our childhood. Was like, I don't know if you remember, we had NBC's or ABC's Wide World of Sports.
Yeah, I'm a couple years older, so I definitely
So and it was they're
every Saturday, right? Or
excellent
Sunday.
content.
Yeah.
It was like you turn it on and it'd be like downhill skiing.
Yeah.
And it would be
the guy crashing through the intro was amazing, right?
And you're like, whoa. And you would sit right down in front of the television and it didn't matter whether it was bad.
Thank you. I mean, it could have been the worst sport that you wanted to watch.
Yeah. And fortunately, they showed off-road racing.
Okay.
And so I remember being a kid, I had probably been like 10 or so years old, and turning it on, and here it is, the Ball 1000, Ivan Stewart, out front in a Toyota Tacoma, leading, and I'm like, wow. Yeah. This is the coolest thing.
Cool as hell, yeah.
And so, fast forward to now I'm friends with Ivan.
Right.
And I've had that experience, but and I've owned Tacomas, multiple Tacomas. Yeah. But that had an effect on us. Yeah. So that's the same thing that we want to do is we want to turn people onto this. Yeah.
That kid that's watching that in maybe 30 years is doing like changing the world or just doing something because of something you did. Well, that's a key.
It's funny because then it becomes a life lesson, right? Yeah. Like if you can give somebody something and it motivates them to get off their ass and go travel and go have these experiences firsthand, you've had an effect on the world.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, before we get into the next part, because he has a couple things that, believe it or not, that he actually has passed the Mad Media thing. We're going to get into, have you ever had Uncle Nearest?
No.
So I had this, there was a little Halloween, like 6 people, obviously during the pandemic we got to limit our experience, but one of my buddies is a, kind of a bigwig at like some company, CEO or whatever. And he said a client gave him this, so I was like, he let me try it, and sure enough, it is super good.
And is this a single malt, or where are we at?
I don't know, because I didn't realize it's a small batch. I can't.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's always bourbon with me. I mean, I'm not a big Japanese. I've got a few of those on the show, some scotches, some Irish whiskeys, but I usually just stick to the bourbons. But yeah, this is again a small batch.
It's one of the cool things I like about what's going on, especially in America with distilled spirits, is now they're taking that same creative process that revolutionized beer and applying that to this.
Yeah, and wine.
Yeah.
So
it's really cool.
Yeah, there's just a lot of different aspects to it. Yeah. So I think you'll dig this one for sure. No, it's got a little more heat in the beginning, much like the Old Forester, but super good.
It's really good.
Yeah, I try not to, I counted the other day, I have 32 bottles, but I had 40 at one time, so I've kind of, I've drank a few, but I gotta keep restocking, not just because of the show. But, and I don't want, this is not a plug for me, but, the point was that we were talking before this, is that everything you just talked about is that that's kind of what I chose to do with this show. I mean, I'm 49 this month. It's like, I just want to be able to do something a little different and to have people, look back and go, man, that was a great, I'm working on the production part, obviously. I'm not Mad Media. But I just want people to be able to get their stories out and to be able to have fun doing it. This isn't about the whiskey. I mean, the whiskeys are great, and I love bringing them up, and I love drinking them. It kind of gets us all loose.
I'm loving this too, so I'm going to have to go do research on all this.
It's just a good idea for people to just be like, you know what, I want to be able to have a platform instead of standing in front of my camera and say, hey man, I'm such and such. It's like, I really think that just having a conversation with people, it's just a great thing.
Look, I agree. I think it's similar to the podcast format,
right?
And
which I have a podcast too. It just transfers later, so you'll be on both. But anyway.
It's authentic, right? Yeah. And you're getting real conversations with real people. I'm a huge Rogan fan.
Yeah.
And so I think him and some other guys have really revolutionized media.
Yeah.
And I think clearly what it's shown is that people would rather consume that than the, necessarily, super produced interview stuff where, they're not going to really say what they mean.
Correct. Yeah, be raw, man.
They're gonna hold it back.
That's awesome. So the next part was, I didn't realize that he actually bought this company, so I guess there's a thing called the Mint 400.
It's a thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, oh, okay, I've heard of it, but I mean, you said you purchased it, so it's something. It was a thing, it was an entity, it was something you could buy.
Yeah. So, a little bit about the history of the Mint. In 1967, Bud Feldkamp and his brother, with one other guy, did the first Peninsula run, which led to the Baja 1000.
Okay.
Well, these guys in Vegas had heard about that because they'd gotten all this attention. They go, that sounds like a good idea. So they put a couple guys in buggies with reporters and sent them from Las Vegas to Reno.
Okay.
More or less as a publicity stunt, right? And it worked so well. In both cases, the very next year, they're like, oh, it's a race, right? So 1968 and, both the Baja 1000 and the Mint 400 started. And the Mint 400 was started as a way to promote the Mint Hotel.
Oh, that's right.
And
which was a Vegas thing, right?
Yeah. In Las Vegas on Fremont Street. And they just thought it would be a good idea to get a bunch of national attention.
Sure.
And it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kept going. And then it blew up and became, this thing where
the race was bigger than the hotel, probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, all the biggest racers and actors, and James Garner, Steve McQueen, and then in the very beginning, a very famous racer, named Parnelli Jones came and raced it.
Okay.
And so he was telling everybody, hey, I just won the Indy 500, now I'm going to go win the Mint 400.
Okay.
And everybody's like, well, what's the Mint 400?
Right.
Well, they found out.
And I don't mean to be ignorant. It's buggies or cars, right? Or
it's all vehicles.
okay. It's a vehicle, not a motorcycle.
No, we do motorcycles. Oh. We actually just brought the motorcycles back.
So there's different things you can race.
We have 80 different classes.
Oh, okay.
So people to this day, we had 600 entries last year, including bikes.
Okay.
So people to this day will race everything from a VW Bug, which is a class we call Class 11 car.
Okay.
The stock VW Bug.
That's what you mentioned earlier, right? Like with the classes. Okay.
Yes. To our top of the food chain, which is called a trophy truck.
Okay.
Which a trophy truck is, 1,000 horsepower, 36 inches of wheel travel. It is an F-16 that drives across the earth.
Right.
They're incredible.
Huh.
So, no, it's become the biggest race in North America.
Wow. And you guys purchased that 10 years ago.
Yeah, when we purchased it, it wasn't, it had a hiatus.
Uh-huh.
And a small organization resurrected it, and we purchased it from them after they ran it for a couple of years, and we just knew that we could grow it back to its prominence.
Oh, okay.
And so we've done that, and grown it even past that now.
Yeah.
So no, it's to us is again, it's this thing where we want to show, we built this event, or we modified this event,
right,
so that it's a spectacle for spectators.
Right.
So you can show up with your family.
Huh.
We've got 5 different spectating areas. Usually about 65,000 people show up.
Wow. How long is it, by the way? 2-3 days?
Yeah, more or less it's a week long.
Okay.
The first weekend in March, traditionally, in Las Vegas. And
now, did it happen this year?
we did. Yeah.
Oh, okay, right, because that was like borderline.
We literally, we were done with our event, and the very next week they shut everything down.
Yeah, because I mean it was like March 18th or something, so you were kind of done if it was first week in March.
Yeah,
okay.
We were
It wasn't even a thing yet, really. I mean, it was like in the back skirts, but no one was talking about shutting stuff down. Per se.
So we dodged a bullet.
Nice.
But again, like what's funny is like we sit here now and San Diego's being shut down again,
Right.
You can't eat inside a restaurant and all this kind of stuff, and our event's outdoors.
Yeah.
I mean, we're standing in the Mojave Desert in the sunlight.
Right.
Doesn't get much safer
The
than
most
that.
UV you can get, right?
Yeah. I mean, they can make all the UV things they want,
right. But sunlight's still the best.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You stand out in the Mojave, and if you don't have water, you're gonna die.
Yeah. So you guys aren't in Baja anymore.
We are not. We don't own a race in Baja. We still do work down there.
Yeah. So this mint is in the Mojave Desert.
Yep, it's in Las Vegas, or just outside Las Vegas.
Yeah, March. It can be hot for sure. Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I just love that. I just love that you have just kind of just taken now. And again, I'm not going to get into your finances or anything. I don't mean to bring that up, but I mean that is it. It's more of a passion, or is that It's just what made you decide it? What made you go, hey, I want to buy the Mint 400?
Well, we had this experience in skateboarding where we were inside of ESPN coming in and crafting the X Games, and in the very beginning of it, it was a mess.
Yeah.
And they worked and shaped it into what it is now, and so we saw them do that. So we looked at off-road racing and went, that needs to be done in this space.
Got it.
And I think that first off, the product from a spectator consumer standpoint is undeniable. It's just when you see trophy trucks and all the other vehicles
just flying by you,
racing against each other, it's incredible.
Oh.
And
because they're going a couple hundred, maybe 150. Trophy trucks are probably flying.
We're now like the top trophy trucks are now 150, 160.
Yeah, but jumping, right?
But over 3 foot whoops.
Exactly,
right?
that's what I mean.
So
in the air.
it's you look at it and you're it's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
So we know that value is there, and then when you look at just like we were talking about earlier, the effect that culture in Southern California has. Okay, so let's start connecting the dots here on money. Okay, Jeep,
right?
Ford Raptor,
okay,
right? Chevy. You keep going down the line of all the off-road vehicles.
Right
now, Polaris RZR, Can-Am,
yes,
Kawasaki, Yamaha, Honda. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars globally.
Mm-hmm.
Tires, oil, shocks.
Yeah, every part you could possibly imagine.
Fox Shocks, which was started here in San Diego, they're on track to do $850 million this year.
Mm-hmm.
Polaris RZR, Polaris will be doing over $1 billion in off-road this year. Right? So that's all from our culture, right? And so one thing we've done a very poor job of is being organized and accepting credit for that. So that was one of the things we looked at with the Mint, and we're like, look, we think we can take this thing, this culture and this history that we have, and prop it up and grow the value of it and mainstream it really is our goal, right?
Yeah, kind of bring it back.
Yeah,
mainstream.
Even beyond bringing it back, go further, because there's we have better tools now. We have the internet, we have social media, we have live streaming. we have ways of reaching millions upon millions of people.
So did that work?
Yeah.
I mean, as of last year, it was a huge success.
Yeah, I mean, we had a live stream last year that reached 800,000 uniques.
Wow.
That's like a huge hit television show that
yeah, no kidding.
that we produced ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that wasn't with the help of a network.
Right.
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 That's the last 10 years of building content around it, and we've been doing all the television for it as well. So one of the big differences is that we don't expect anybody to know all the knowledge that we have.
Right.
So my brother writes the script and produces. We have a bunch of arguments about stuff, and ultimately the best outcome occurs because we're passionate about it, right?
That's awesome.
And as much as that process is a lot of work and it's a pain in the ass, we really wouldn't have it any other way.
Right.
Because I wouldn't want to look at something ever and be like, you know what, that's not as good as NBC or ABC Sports was.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, you don't want to compare it.
No, so I want to be better. And I want,
you
just
want that Joker experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or just like for me, I was a kid in Michigan who saw, that on television, and it changed. It's why I'm here today.
Right.
Why I'm doing this. Right.
That's awesome.
So I want to make sure that we're having that effect on people and not shortchanging it.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna have one more drink, and I'm gonna wrap this up. But let's have another. You didn't finish your...
Oh,
damn it! It's alright. I'm joking. He's doing the talking, so he kind of has to be the guy who doesn't get that. Are you good?
that's good.
So have you ever had Breckenridge bourbon?
I have not.
Okay. This one's actually it's from the Rocky Mountains, so it's not your typical Kentucky bourbon. So Breckenridge, Colorado, obviously, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
I've spent a bunch of time there.
I was going to say, sounds like you're very well traveled.
Yeah.
So,
Great place.
sorry.
Great place to snowboard.
Yeah. No, I lived in Vail for a couple years, so it's definitely one of my. And speaking of Trans World and Snowboard Magazine and all that, this is a weird story. So I left and swapped places with a buddy who I taught the first day ever to snowboard. I was some punk kid snowboarding. He was a friend of mine from the East Coast, flew out, swapped with me, said, I'll take your spot. Literally, dude, 6 months later, I'm in the Navy. He's on the freaking cover of Trans World Magazine as one of the leading snowboarders.
Nice.
But I mean, I don't take credit. It was just weird that damn it, I should have stayed with a little bit more because I taught him how to snowboard the first day, just to kind of get his things. Next thing you know, he's on the cover of Trans World Magazine.
That's fast tracking.
That's amazing. Yeah, it was pretty cool. The Breckenridge, here we go. Now that's got a little different taste than the other ones for sure. Not bad, not good. Just saying, different, right?
That one's more peaty.
Yeah, that is definitely on a little bit of it.
It's good though.
Oh, it is. I will never knock it. I'm just like, it's definitely different tasting though.
It's one of the things that through learning wine and getting to understand a lexicon or a palette of wine.
Like different, when people say oaky and all that stuff, it's like a whole different thing, right?
Well, it's helped me with understanding whiskeys and tequilas and mezcals and really in food.
Right.
Right?
Oh, true.
So, there's some wine that I've had recently, actually it's a good story. The lead singer of Tool, Maynard Keenan, I met him at a jiu-jitsu tournament.
Okay.
And fast forward 2 years later he goes, yeah, I'm starting this winery in Arizona in this town. And I was like, I've never heard of this town.
Right.
Right. And a winery in Arizona doesn't sound
normal.
That doesn't sound like a good business plan. But clearly I'm wrong. He has a very successful winery.
Right.
In Jerome.
Spot. Yeah. Okay.
And his wine, well, not all of it, but most of it is known for its minerality.
Oh, okay.
Right. And it's one of those things like you're like, okay, you automatically kind of don't like it because it's an unusual palate change.
Right.
But then, I guess just like sampling food, sometimes you want fried chicken.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what you want.
Right.
Sometimes you want sushi. That's what you want. Right. So, no, I've learned to actually like it quite a bit. But when you taste it at first, it's challenging. You're like, okay.
Yeah,
you know?
I can taste the minerals, right, or whatever.
Yeah, you can taste the soil, and the soil there is super dry and craggy and rocky.
Huh. Wow.
But yeah,
I need to try that wine.
He makes some really good wine. Now he has, I think, 3 or 4 wineries there and a couple restaurants. So.
Wow. And of course, he's going to be successful, right?
Yeah.
Well, I do want to wrap him up. Matt has been an amazing guest, and I just want to take a second to, first of all, thank you for opening up.
Oh, absolutely.
Your
thank
story
you.
is unreal. I mean, there's so many layers to all these people. I try to keep it somewhat condensed, just because there's only so much time that someone has. But you have just so many layers. So Google him, check him out. And I want to kind of give a little bit of a quick plug to him, because he seems to always be so giving. I think our buddy Alex Streiler.
Yep.
You're willing to give people opportunities. I know that his son Will was going to do an internship, and then the pandemic hit, and then you've given his son Cole, who I've had on the show, a chance to sell socks at the Mid 400.
Yep.
I'm sure you've done way more than that, and then obviously Alex's platform that he's working on now, and working with him. I think you've done some public speaking with him.
Sure.
I just feel like the only reason I know that is because Alex is my friend.
Right.
But I just feel like you're not just, this isn't about you. You're always trying to give back and help other people. That's what I'm trying to bring out. That just because of one family, one guy, you've obviously done that probably for multiple people. And doing this.
But I think that's an important thing, right? Yeah. That's part of the fabric that ties, a community or culture together, right? Like I've been the recipient of, a leg up or somebody giving me a piece of knowledge that, turned me on or sent me in a direction.
Trying to open that door.
Yeah. I mean, even, in high school when I walked into this graphic design program to make T-shirts for my band.
Right.
The graphic design program was being team taught by 2 teachers.
Okay.
And instead of looking at me and saying, "Oh, this kid's gonna be a pain in the ass,"
right.
This kid's got a blue mohawk. He might be rad.
You have
right?
a blue mohawk.
Yeah. And they, and especially the younger one, his name's Rick Dirk.
A little Glenn Plake in there, huh?
Yeah, basically. He took me under his wing, and he showed me this whole world. I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in now without that influence.
Yeah.
So I understand how important that is.
Right.
And I think, especially for kids, like, they really need somebody to tell them, like, there's something else.
Right.
You don't have to, I wasn't made to go through school, do the degree, and go work for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that.
Right. As you can tell, it worked out though.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had to sacrifice and work my ass off. I still do, right?
Oh, you're working your ass off. No, it's not easy.
But I could, that path was shown to me by other people, and it changed my life. It gave me opportunities that I couldn't see at the time. So I think that's an important thing, just to do that with other people and go, hey, maybe this isn't for you. I want to show you that if I don't know everything, you don't know everything.
Correct.
So let's just take a look at a few things.
That's awesome. Well, I want to ask you real quick, what do you have going on? I know you mentioned earlier before we started, you have multiple companies under this umbrella. Mm-hmm. So name all those things, because after the Mid 400, I think you have another race thing you've got going on. So just tell us everything you do, and then we'll wrap it up. Yeah,
so we own an off-road clothing brand called Dirt Company. We own the Mid 400, the UTV World Championship, both off-road races.
All right.
We own a website media outlet called UTV Underground, which is the foremost UTV media site in the world.
Okay.
And then earlier this year, we launched a new media outlet called Off-Road Racer, which basically houses everything off-road racing globally.
Wow. So you're launching all these things, and all these are possible if someone just listened to that. They would just be able to Google all those individual things, and they'd be able to find different ways and how to plug into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Now, do you have any kind of Instagram or Facebook or?
All of them have Instagram.
And what is your? Oh, all of those individual outlets have their own media.
Yeah, you can find them on social media, but we always tell people go to the websites because that's where the bulk of the content is.
Okay, and you as a person probably don't have as much as Mad Media and all the outlets do, correct?
I mean, I'm on social media.
Right.
I think you have to be.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I just want to make sure you plug in everything you possibly can.
I'm pretty easy to find.
Yeah. And how do you spell Martelli? I want to make sure. Is it Martilli?
It's Martelli.
There you go.
Yep.
Because I would have gotten it the wrong way. Well, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Thank you to Matt Martelli. I appreciate his time tonight, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, man.
Hey, that was good, man.
Yeah, it was fun.
Dude, I was like...